of the woods, deciding that the flower has absorbed enough for now. With a satisfied smile, he gently pulls the brightly glowing flower from the ground, roots and all, and tells his companion it's time for them to find a new place to feed. He holds the plant, which seems to bloom with new energy, and wonders where it might rank among all the evolved plant-type spirits. He concludes that with its powerful desolation attribute, it must be at least an A-level threat. As he walks along a dark ridge, he notices the deep silence of the forest and realizes that all the animals that once lived there must have fled in terror from the flower's power. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted by a loud, ferocious howl that echoes through the night. Fang Yi's expression hardens as he recognizes the sound as the howl of a wolf. On a nearby cliff, against a blood-red moon, a pack of monstrous wolves with glowing red eyes gathers, their forms shifting and growing. Fang Yi realizes with alarm that the wolf pack is in the middle of a dangerous evolution. Standing before the pack of monstrous wolves, Fang Yi identifies the huge creature on the cliff as the Wolf King, noting its evolution is almost complete. With a loud howl, the Wolf King finishes its transformation, its body now glowing with a menacing green energy. Fang Yi, holding his potted flower, is surprised by the immense spiritual power coming from the creature, realizing with alarm that it is about to become an A-level anomaly. The newly evolved wolf pack quickly surrounds him, cutting off any escape. Fang Yi figures out that the Wolf King has evolved a new, powerful poison attribute from its original wood attribute, a change likely caused by absorbing the dark attribute energy in the area. Despite the danger, Fang Yi remains calm, dismissing the threat as only A-level in strength. He takes his obedient little white flower out of its pot, telling it that it's time for them to solve the problem. He kneels and plants the flower in the ground, thinking that while the anomaly is only A-level, the large number of wolves is a problem. More importantly, the city is just down the mountain, and letting them get there would cause a major disaster. As the Wolf King lunges to attack, Fang Yi tells his flower to begin, and a brilliant green energy starts to flow from the plant. He decides to test the flower's power, curious to see how much damage it can do on its own. A massive beam of green, life-draining energy shoots into the night sky, visible from far down the mountain where another group of pioneers is watching. This new squad observes the scene with concern. One of the men notes that the Wolf King has successfully evolved and is incredibly strong. He asks about the contamination level, and a cloaked figure replies that it has reached 90. The man and his companion are stunned by the dangerously high reading. The squad's blonde-haired leader grows tense, realizing the danger is still increasing. He identifies the Wolf King's wood attribute as being at least at the 3-star Ghost Axe realm, maybe even reaching the Spirit Creation realm, while the rest of the pack is also powerful. He worries that his team doesn't have enough people to handle the threat, admitting that even he has only recently broken through to the 3-star Ghost Axe realm. Suddenly, the leader notices the massive beam of green energy and the clear presence of the dark attribute. He now understands why the contamination level is so high. He shouts in alarm, explaining to his team that the Wolf King has evolved dual attributes, something he knows is extremely rare among anomalies. The contamination reading on the squad leader's watch suddenly spikes to 100. The leader grits his teeth, knowing they must stop the wolf pack's evolution before the area below is lost. He recognizes that the beasts, already cruel, will only become more terrifying with their new power. He decides to call the Spiritual Energy Association for backup. Just then, the ground begins to shake violently. One of his men asks if it's an earthquake, but the leader knows the wolf's evolution shouldn't cause such a tremor. He realizes with growing fear that another, different anomaly has appeared. His watch confirms his fear as the contamination reading skyrockets to an impossible 1000. The pioneers look on in terror as a massive eruption of green desolation energy bursts from the mountaintop. The green-haired pioneer recognizes the power of desolation, wondering in disbelief why it would appear here. As the life-draining energy rushes toward them, the squad panics. One man cries out, asking if this is the giant vine from the sky that had disappeared, sad that there was no warning. The squad leader shouts for his team to retreat and get all nearby residents evacuated immediately. However, just as quickly as it appeared, the huge wave of desolation energy seems to stop. One of the men calls out to the leader, noting that the energy has stopped advancing. The squad watches as the massive vortex of green power pulls back, sinking back into the mountain. They wonder if the danger has passed. One asks if they should still report it, while another questions if they should go up the mountain. On the mountaintop where Fang Yi planted his flower, the ground is covered in a network of thick green roots. These roots sprout dozens of glowing white flowers, which then erupt in a massive burst of green energy, blooming into a huge, radiant flower-like structure. The energy then transforms into a sea of white petals that covers the entire area. The Wolf King howls in fury as the seemingly harmless petals turn into a deadly weapon, forming a sharp blade that slices through the air. Fang Yi stands calmly among the swirling petals and explains the terrifying nature of his flower's power. The sea of spiritual flowers will endlessly grow back and multiply, absorbing and purifying the enemy until nothing is left. Fang Yi stands on his flower's massive root system. As the wolf pack begins to fall to its power, he taunts the Wolf King, asking how its pack members will do without the same spiritual protection he has. The smaller wolves are quickly trapped by vines covered in white flowers, their life energy rapidly drained until only their skeletons remain, collapsing into dust. Having absorbed the life force of the entire pack, the flower and its petals turn a deep, menacing red. In a last, desperate attempt, the Wolf King gathers its energy and fires a powerful green blast from its mouth. The red flower, however, easily forms a protective barrier, absorbing the full force of the attack. Hidden among the swirling red petals and vines, Fang Yi tells the beast that its attack is useless. He explains that the desolation attribute of his spiritual flower has already taken root deep within the mountain itself. The Sea of Flowers, he says, draws its power from the mountain and uses it on the mountain, creating an endless cycle of power. The Wolf King, now smart after its evolution, seems to understand its hopeless situation, but still refuses to give up. It identifies the main red flower as the source of the power and charges directly at it. Fang Yi watches with a small smile, mockingly asking his little flower what it will do now that it has been discovered. In response, the central red flower grows to an immense size and lunges forward to meet the charging Wolf King. It opens its massive petals and traps the beast within its grasp. The Wolf King howls in agony as its life force is drained away by the powerful desolation attribute. The massive red flower continues to absorb the Wolf King, its green energy being eaten by the desolation attribute. Fang Yi watches with a serious expression, surprised that his flower is allowing the dark attribute to invade it. The Wolf King is completely consumed by the flower's pulsating red petals. Fang Yi is amazed by this development, marveling at the formidable power of the desolation attribute. He realizes that he never expected the flower to be able to create its own technique without his direct input after he implanted the attribute. As the giant flower shrinks back down, he understands the terrifying nature of its new ability. Once an enemy is trapped within the Sea of Flowers, there is no escape. The flower then spits out the clean, bleached skeleton of the Wolf King. Fang Yi concludes that even if the spiritual flowers are destroyed, they can endlessly grow back and use their desolation power to reduce any enemy to bones. Standing before the massive red flower, which is now surrounded by a field of smaller red flowers, he decides to give this new technique a name, the Endless Spiritual Sea. A system window appears, confirming his creation and announcing that the spiritual flower has successfully written the desolation attribute technique, Endless Spiritual Sea. Having finished its battle, the flower's petals close up, glowing brightly from within. Fang Yi looks on, a bit tired from the battle, as a single red petal gently brushes his cheek. The flower then erupts with a massive surge of energy, and Fang Yi realizes with surprise that his little flower is also about to evolve.
Thanks for watching. I'm going to see you next video.